I know the rules. I'm good. I know the rules. I'm good. Chapter 26, memorized. Robert's Rules of Order. I've got all 9 editions of that. As a Bible there. That wasn't very progressive. Except for court counsel. Oh, you just told them to stay home. That's not very progressive, Councilwoman Riley. No, it's not. No, it's not. I do not hear the angels singing right now. I do not hear them. They have left the room. We ready, Janine?
Yep.
Good evening. Thank you for joining us for the City of Binghamton business meeting, 6 p.m., 24th of May, 2023, Wednesday. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Clerk will call the roll. Madam Clerk.
Councilwoman Rezinetti,
Present.
Councilwoman Riley,
Present.
Councilmember Friedman,
Present.
Councilman Burns,
Present.
Councilman Strawn,
Present.
Councilman Scanlon,
Present.
and President Scringy.
Present.
That's all 7 here.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Chair recognizes Councilwoman Rezinetti for the purposes of a motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to make a motion for to approve the minutes from the May 10th, 2023 business meeting.
Do I have a second? Motion by Councilwoman Rezinetti, seconded by Councilman Scanlon. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Minutes are passed unanimously. Thank you very much. At this moment, we will move on to setting of public hearings. Madam Clerk.
The City of Binghamton will hold a public hearing regarding local law 23-01, a local law amending the code of the City of Binghamton, Chapter 355, Streets and Sidewalks for regulating utility poles. This public hearing will take place during the June 6, 2023 business meeting at 6 p.m. in council chambers.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. This time we'll move on to public comment. Residents wishing to submit public comment may do so electronically by emailing their comments prior to 1 p.m. on the day of the meeting to clerk@cityofbinghamton.gov or in person during the meeting. Each person will have 5 minutes to speak. Please announce your name and whether you work or live in the City of Binghamton. Madam Clerk, were there any electronic submissions received by 1 p.m. today? Thank you. Chair seeing no one in the chamber, we'll move on with the agenda and we will move on to second read legislation. Chair recognizes Councilman Scanlon for the purposes of a motion regarding introductory ordinance 23-78.
Thank you, Mr. President. Introductory ordinance 23-78, an ordinance to amend the 2023 code enforcement budget to defund 2 code inspectors and increase wages.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion by Councilman Scanlon, seconded by Councilwoman Rezinetti. Discussion. Councilman Burns.
Thank you, Mr. President. I speak for my constituents. And as I stated in a couple weeks ago when we held this over, me and my constituents and others on the city council, we feel that the code department is vital to our residents and just as vital as to our residents as the police department is. The quality of life, improving people's quality of life, we should do everything that we can do with the dollars that we have. to do that. Now, I agree with the legislation in that the code department deserves, the workers, the employees deserve a raise, and I support that 100%. I believe they're overworked, and I don't think that giving them more money is going to suddenly give them less work to do. They can't work any harder. I do know that they're all dedicated people that are underpaid, but they work very hard for that, for their money, and they deserve more than we're giving them. Years ago, people would talk about a living wage. And I remember when former Matt Ryan first ran, that was an issue of did the city want it? Was the city going to do business with people? Were we going to give contracts to companies that weren't paying their employees a living wage? And I supported not doing that then, and I do that now, but what we're doing for those at home watching, we are doing away with 2 code inspectors in the code department in order to finance the raises, the increases in salary to the other employees. Now, I talked about the police and the code department. Now, and this increase in salary will incentivize the employees to stay with the city, because it's very difficult to find people. There's 3 positions that are funded now that are unfilled. And we are defunding 2 of those. Now, I associate the 2 departments because of the quality of life. And when we wanted to incentivize the police department with the officers to stay with the city and not leave, the city council voted to give them $3,000 each to the those on patrol, all of the patrol officers, $3,000 each as an incentive to stay. Now, we did not defund. Now, there's 19 positions in the police department at that time that were unfilled that we wanted to fill, but we didn't just defund a couple of those positions to come up with the money. We came up with the money, and still knowing that the quality of life is important to our constituents, continued to look for the police officers, and we still are looking for them. Now, that in mind, and we did come up with that money, we have a very healthy fund balance. Now, the police department, we came up with ARPA funds, and it was questionable whether that was good spending of ARPA funds. I voted yes, I thought it was. There's people that called me and said, how could I agree to such a thing? But to me, again, quality of life is the issue. And we have a healthy fund balance that former Mayor David and our current Mayor Cram love to brag about when they give speeches. And it is something to brag about. We as a city council and they as mayors have done a very good job with the finances of the city. But with that in mind, I would like to put a motion on the floor that we amend this RL to reflect that we give all of the increases in salary that the employees that are in the RL, and that we do not defund the 2 code inspector positions. We take from the budget line 4999, which is our fund balance, and put in $43,394 into line A 8664.5100. That is the code department. This will fund 6 months of 2 inspectors from July 1st to December 31st. And that these jobs should be posted immediately at the new yearly salary of $43,394. And hopefully, we can hire them by July 1st.
Second,
Councilman Burns, really quickly, run me those numbers again one more time, please.
The yearly salary of the new yearly salary. Oh, the two
for-
numbers? Okay.
Yeah, forgive
So-
me, just
so
the,
taking
just the
from-
numbers that are in your amendment proposal.
Taking from budget line 4999, which is the fund balance.
Yep.
And putting $43,394 into A 8664.5100. And that is would pay each inspector half of a yearly salary. Then when budget time comes, we can then get together and figure out how to keep them online.
What would the start date on that be?
July 1st would be I mean, if we were to post it and somebody was hired right away before July 1st, then we should come up with some, another month's salary. But
So there's also going to need, there's also going to be a need to propose language such as a section 2 at the bottom respect to how to direct those additional funds. Correct?
we direct them, we just don't unfund them. We're basically giving them a raise. We're not defunding the positions. We're taking out the unfunding language.
So this is a technicality, but it's a big distinction with a big difference. So I understand the logic of what you're proposing. However, there's 2 technical ways to do this. The RL is currently now on the transfer increase side breaks down the increases of all of those. So are you saying you want to put $43,394 into line A8664 for those 2 current vacant positions? That's what you're correct.
To amend this RL,
Right.
this RL is doing away with it. So the money is gone. So I'm proposing that we're putting that much money back into 8664.5100 to finance a half a year's salary for 2 code inspectors.
Right, because the annual salary is at 43,394.
That's correct.
Okay, so there is a motion on the floor by Councilman Burns to amend. Let me just make sure I get this right. Introductory ordinance 23-78 to add a transfer 2 line for $43,394 into line A8664.51000 from line A4999, the city's general fund for the 2 vacant positions. Councilwoman Riley, you seconded that?
point of clarification, he also struck section 1, subsection I, or also number 1, where it says defund 2 code.
Okay,
Right,
Right.
when I was asking about that distinction of difference, that's what I was asking
right. So
about.
that
Okay,
is
yeah.
he's amending that line as well.
Corp counsel, does that have to be done in 2 separate amendment proposals?
Sure, so I'm actually reaching out to Brian right now to see if he has.
All right, so I'm just play it safe just in case. So as it stands right now, I've got a motion to, and you can make that motion, Councilwoman, if you would like for that second part, to add the numbers that I just stated from Councilman Burns. Councilwoman Riley, did you second? Councilman, okay. So that's been seconded. So as it stands right now, discussion on the motion to amend. Councilwoman Freeman.
Thank you, President Scaringi. I am fully in support of this motion for the reasons stated above by Councilman Burns. This is a conversation that a series of multiple conversations that I think we've all been having with multiple people and multiple stakeholders. And something that we were talking about earlier, my opinion is that increasing the wages of the code inspectors at the expense of two positions is kind of a false situation that we're in. What's the word that I'm looking for? A false choice, I guess, that we have to make. You know, we're kind of in a position like the way that this RL is written, or the way that this legislation is written right now, it's kind of like, okay, I'm in the kitchen and I only have enough eggs to either bake chocolate chip cookies or brownies. And the reality is I could actually go to the grocery store and get more eggs and make both of those things. I can make chocolate chip cookies and I can make brownies, because I think that we're all in agreement here that the code enforcement officers need a raise. I think that we can see that from the fact that at this salary level, these positions have laid vacant for many months now. And the code enforcement inspectors do difficult work. They do thankless work. It's sometimes scary. It's sometimes dangerous, and it's sometimes unpleasant. And the employees who work for the city of Binghamton deserve a wage that says we value your work. We really couldn't do a lot of this without you. And $36,000, $34,000, right? That's not the wage at which we are saying as taxpayers, we value your work. So everyone, I think it's safe to say that everyone agrees that these wages need to be raised, but we don't have to do it at the expense of defunding two positions. And the reason why I say that is because we're playing this shell game. We're acting like there's only so much money, and in order to give a raise, the money can only come from these two vacant positions. And like Councilman Burns says, we have a healthy fund balance that we like to brag about, but that healthy fund balance is useless unless we actually take the money and put it toward things that benefit the residents of the city of Binghamton. So it's not fair to then say, oh, we want to, you know, we're not in favor of the raise. Of course, everyone's in favor of the raise. It's been shown that that's necessary, and we can also have a fully staffed code department. In many of our conversations about code, we're often met with the rebuttal that code, you know, all the code enforcement inspectors and the code officers are working at full capacity, as they are. But here we have an opportunity to not only give people a living wage, but also alleviate that workload where maybe then we will have flexibility to do more proactive code enforcement. Maybe we will have the ability to actually get on top of prolonged recurrent issues that currently we are not able to. So we can have our cake and eat it too. We can have enough eggs to bake both chocolate chip cookies and brownies. And I think that it is common sense to amend this legislation as Councilman Burns has proposed. There's no sense in having a healthy fund balance if we don't actually take the money and do things with it. Here we have an opportunity for, in the grand scheme of things, not that much money, where we can keep two incredibly essential positions and we can pay all of our employees in the code department a living wage. So I thank you very much for making this motion, and I'm absolutely in support of it. We can have our cake and eat it too. Thank you.
Okay, no, that's okay. Just a quick comment that, I think that we're in agreement here about the importance of the code office or department and how important it is for us to support it. And I'm hearing both sides. And in the end, I feel like there's always more we can do for code, and I'm committed to do that in any way that we can as it comes up. I also feel like we have to support them right now and for what their needs are right now. And I have to listen to the experts. And the expert is department head of the code officer that reached out to us, to me, I can't speak for anybody else, saying that they're in support of this. It makes sense for them right now. And just going back on what Chris was saying when he was down here, that he feels that they're in a good place and this is just what makes the most sense for them. So as you know, I'm hearing the discussion and I appreciate it. And so I'm just I have to put my faith into the I guess the experts, which in this case it's Chris and the rest of the folks who are out there doing this kind of work, and honor their requests. And those are my thoughts right now for this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman Rosanna. Councilman Scanlon.
This is a question for Corp Counsel. Because this was held over, should we vote on this as it sits, the way it was written, before we talk about amendments? I'm asking a question.
If there's a motion to amend it, and it was seconded, you're going to vote on the amended language first. If that passes, then you vote on it as amended. And if it doesn't pass, then you have to vote on it as is.
All right, thank you.
Amendments can be made on the floor, which is the reason why the discussion is only germane to the amendment motion, I should say now. And then depending on how that goes, then we go back to the RL as original or RL as amended. I'm going to take them as separate. So if you would like to, if anyone. I didn't get that, which is the reason why I questioned it.
On the microphone so everybody can hear. So when Councilman Burns initially started the amendment, he said we do not need to defund two positions. He did not say strike from the record, which would have been better. So you know that he's clearly
Right,
striking
yeah.
that
No,
language. But he did say we do not need to defund two positions. I'm
Right,
making this
but
amendment.
that's in the substance of the discussion, not in the motion that was made. So that wasn't what I got. What I got was a line number and a dollar amount.
Okay.
Councilman Burns, if you would like to just formalize that, I think it's better just to leave it. It's your call.
Why is it better?
What's that?
Why do you think it's better to leave it, or for me to clarify putting it together?
It's your amendment proposal. I think it's better to keep them separate, but it's your amendment proposal. You have a right to make it. If you want to restate your motion and pull the original one back,
Right.
you have the right to do that.
Okay, for Corporation Counsel, is that correct? I can just change the motion to include the not defunding.
Councilman Burns. So what you need to do procedurally is, if you would like to clarify your motion and make it something different for the record, I need you to pull your original motion that you
Right.
made and then make a new amendment proposal, which you have the right to do if you
Okay.
would like.
Mr. President, I'd like to poll
Okay,
my amendment.
so you'd like to formally rescind?
I want to
Okay.
formally rescind my amendment
Okay.
and make another amendment.
Okay. Would you like to make?
Make
an
another
amendment?
motion.
Would you
or
like to
another-
make a motion for an amendment proposal at this time?
Yes.
A new one, I mean, please, floor is yours.
Yes. Mr. President, I would like to make a motion to the RL to not defund two positions in the department, which in the budget line is A 8664.5100. And further, I would like to take from budget line 4999 from our fund balance and put into line, transfer $43,394 from that fund balance to line A 8664.5100, which would fund for 6 months 2 inspectors from July 1st to December 31st in the code department.
Second.
Okay, so I'm gonna formalize that really quick. So there is an amendment motion on the floor to strike the language in introductory ordinance 23-78, section 1, subsection 1, and to amend that with taking $43,394 from line A 4999 and moving it to line A 8664.51000. Is that what you're saying, sir?
Yes, and I'm glad you're city council president.
You know, it's funny that you mentioned that
Yeah.
because Councilwoman Riley actually said the same thing to me just before this meeting started. So I really appreciate that, Councilman Burns. Gentleman and a scholar. Thank you, sir. Is there a second to the amendment? Motion.
Second.
So the motion by Councilman Burns, seconded by Councilwoman Riley. Okay. Now discussion on the amendment. Councilman Strong.
When you say discussion on the amendment, I think mine's all, I'll just say what I say. I'm substantively in agreement with this. Here's my fear. I think this has to go through the Board of Apportionment and estimate and apportionment, sorry. I think I'm I'll say it again. I'm substantively in agreement with what Councilman Burns is proposing. Here's what I feel like is going to happen. No matter what we try to do on the fly, it's not going to be exactly right. And it's going to delay the actual increases for the people we already have in lieu of people that we don't have and we want to get. I think we're all in agreement that we're going to need those other 2 positions. But the commissioner of the code enforcement had a great presentation to us. They're having trouble filling them. We hope this little increase will help fill them. I get that. But right now they can't fill them. I'm afraid that we're going to actually delay the increases for the people that we actually already have, for people that we have no idea that are out there somewhere that we might try to find. Because I feel like no matter what we try to do, that this is not going to be exactly right, whether it's budget lines, whether the Board of Apportionment and Estimates needs to approve it. There's going to be something that's not right and it's going to delay it. So I'm not officially proposing this. I'm generally proposing that we bring it back as a separate legislation to refund these positions and not wait till the next budget either. I am in favor of putting them back in, but I think we need to do it in 2 steps. That's my thought. I think if we do it right now, we're going to actually jimmy the whole thing up with what we're actually, with the substantive that I agree with. I think it's not going to functionally work exactly like we're saying that we're trying to do. That's my opinion. So.
Councilwoman Riley.
Thank you again, Council President. And I'm appreciative that we're having such dialogue amongst the council members regarding the state of two positions and the overall salary increases, wage increases for code. And we are all in favor of increasing the wages. We've heard that. We are also mindful that code has had turnover because of what's required of the ones that remain employed and the nature of what's needed to ensure safe, sustainable housing for our residents. Now, Mr. Slater did come and talk about the value of the raises. However, how does it look to the city when people are waiting for properties to be inspected? I'll even speak to some of the landlords that emailed this week about having code come out to finalize processes so they can avail their properties to those waiting for quality, safe housing. So if we are still not able to meet the needs of both the landlords and the tenants, but we're saying that we can't fill a position and the positions are vastly under the wages of our comparator cities and municipalities, as Council Member Freeman mentioned previously, it's not if then that. We can do both. And as council, we can move forward the legislation as it is written and then do what needs to happen because, to ensure that the wages are put forth as written in the unamended portions of the legislation. So again, we typically err on the side of caution when a speedy text is sent to a subset of the body and then you rethink or repurpose or re-strategize because of this random text. But let's think about the people we represent in terms of our constituents. Let's think about the city residents that are dependent upon code. Let's think about the code agents that go out and risk their lives trying to enter properties that are not always the safest. And I wouldn't go into the backyard of some of these houses that they are required to, again, inspect. So we're saying we can do both. We have the time to do both. And if we want to be serious, we can go back to the budget hearings when we talked to Mr. Slider and he said the current status of the department based upon the budget that was submitted in October was fine. They were actively recruiting for the two positions and they did not need any further amendments. So if it was fine 7 months ago, in terms of the number of employees, the number of positions, I think we can move forward and again, take care of both needs, increasing the salaries while maintaining two lines to increase the workforce and the code department's number of hands available for enforcement. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman Riley. Councilwoman Resident.
You. I guess, again, a lot of what I want, and I don't want to repeat myself, but I guess I'm just, thinking that might look like as far as the process, the timeline. And so I feel like I have to really honor the request of Mr. Slider and the request of those in code enforcement. And I would also be in support of bringing down legislation that would regarding more code positions, not wait till budget season. We're obviously all on board to support the code department as in any way possible. But I do feel like, I want to be mindful of their requests and yeah, again, not to repeat myself, but I think it's important that we keep that in mind as they are the experts about what their needs are right now.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilman Scanlon.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, maybe you know this answer, if not, Corporation Council does. If we vote on this RL as it sits now, the way it's written now, there's nothing to say next meeting, we can't come back and say we want to add those 2 positions back. Is that correct?
Technically, we could, yeah.
All right, so I agree with Councilman Strawn here. We try to do things on the fly. We don't have all the answers here, so it's kind of tough to do things on the fly. We don't have the information we need to make the decision. So, and I think we're all talking the same language. I would support bringing those 2 positions back at the next meeting. But I think we needed to me, we have to run this RL as it sits now to make it easier and simpler for us as a council to make sure we're making the right decision and we're not holding up the funding for the people we're trying to get money to. So I would propose we vote on this as it sits now, and I would support, I think we all would, bringing those 2 positions back. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman Freeman.
Thank you, President Skirnji. I do think that's a valid point that has been brought up, and I don't mean to sound snarky when I say this. I am genuinely so thankful when everyone participates in the discussion. Believe it or not, I get tired of being the only person who's like talking a lot of the time. So with no undertone intended of snarkiness, thank you everyone for this discussion, genuinely. Here's my thing. I think that that's a valid point, but in order for me to feel comfortable with saying we'll pass this legislation as it is written without the amendment, I would only feel comfortable doing that if I get a verbal commitment on the record from all of my colleagues that we will actually put forth and vote on legislation to refund these 2 positions. I will put on the record that, yes, I will commit if this is passed as it is written without the amendment, I will verbally commit to refunding these 2 code enforcement inspection positions at the new salary point. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Any other discussion on the amendment?
I'll commit to that. If others would, if everybody committed to the next meeting, putting the 2 positions back.
Or any other discussion on the amendment? Councilman,
I'll just reiterate, what I just said, I'm in support of that. Because I think we got to get these increases in the hands of the people we already have. Almost look at it as 2 separate things, separating his, Mr. Slater's, using the budget partway through the year to fund that. But either way, it's written, it's already passed muster with corporate counsel and ENA. We can get the money in the hands of the people, I think we got to take care of our current employees first and then go back to the board, but I am in support of that.
any other discussion? Councilwoman Rosenay.
Councilman Strong.
She said she concurred. Any other discussion on the amendment? Is there a concurrence and then there's no need of the amendment, or is there any further discussion?
Right. So. You already said.
Mr. President.
What, I'm sorry.
Okay,
I'm
one
sorry.
one at a time, Councilwoman Riley.
Yes, thank you, Council President. So what I've heard is that we have reached a consensus that we are going to draft legislation to reinstitute if this legislation as prior if the legislation, the unamended legislation or proposed, the legislation with the proposed amendments, if it passes, we are putting on our agenda to craft legislation to refund 2 positions. And that's what we've heard. And everyone around this table has said they will support that action at our next scheduled meeting.
Councilwoman Resnick.
Yeah, and I would just like to say that I would also like to hear from the department head and other code officers about how they're feeling about this. I'd just like as much information about this particular issue as possible. I think that should be part of it, or we just move forward. I would guess everybody would like that. But I don't want to assume.
Thank you, Councilman Scanlon.
I feel like we're beating a dead horse here.
Right.
Because I think 5 of us are, there's 5 of us have committed
Right.
to refunding these 2 positions at the next meeting. So I think we're kind of beating a dead horse here. I don't know what Council Riley or Councilman Friedman, what else are you looking for?
What are
Committed to
the
that.
5 that you're talking about? Because we just heard that they want to start another conversation.
Well, that's one council person.
Okay,
There's
Okay,
2,
okay,
3,
hold
4.
hold on. Let's not have back one at a time
Yep,
here,
yep.
one at a
okay,
time.
so
here.
you said 5. You did say 5.
Yes, I believe, I know for a fact, Councilman Freeman supports this, putting 2 people, code inspectors back. Councilman Riley supports this, Councilman Strauss supports it, I stated I support it, and Councilman Burns.
Okay,
Okay, all right, yeah, and I heard what, then you mentioned about the department, which is fine, that's fine, yeah. She did, so 6 of us supported it. So,
so it will be on the agenda.
Okay, then.
Okay, so, all right, so hold on, order. Okay, in my non-presidential capacity, I'm going to add to this discussion now. So there's a technicality here that Councilwoman Riley raised in her comment that she's looking for concurrence of, which is a function of time. Something at the next meeting. So in my non-presidential capacity, here is what I will promise to. I will promise to everything except the function of time. And the reason why is because there are too many variables that are involved in this process that I cannot make a promise to something that I cannot commit to, whether it's estimate and apportionment, whether it's the mayor's office. To be perfectly honest, if we can come up with an RL 2 weeks from now that will fund at $43,394 for 5 code enforcement officers, I'm on board. But I will completely, Councilwoman Friedman, going back to what you stated earlier, I will completely uphold that promise, but I will not hold it as a function of time because there are too many variables that are not present here that none of us as individuals can account for. So I heard a lot of people say I concur, and I don't know if that included the function of time.
Well, as soon as we can get it properly done.
Right. So by definition, that might be the next meeting. That might not be the next meeting. Councilwoman Riley, if I may, and then the floor is yours. I think you were looking for the function of time. You said at the next meeting.
I said on the agenda for the next work session so that we can start the process for approval, because we have to draft the legislation. This is not one person.
Right.
Exactly. So it would have to be on the agenda to ensure that we start it.
If it's literally nothing more than a discussive agenda item, I'm all on full board with that. That's fine. I have no problem with that. In fact, I'll call it right now. Madam Clerk, on the next work session agenda coming up in June, please put up as a discussion item at the end, defunded, no, additional code enforcement officer lines beyond the current department's capacity. Thank you. So there, it's on the agenda. So that being said, Councilman Burns, do you still want to put your motion forward? Okay, I'm seeing a lot of bobbing heads here. The last discussion thing I heard was if there's concurrence, Councilman,
Well, Mr. President, but if there was concurrence, but
Councilman.
then I
Burns,
heard,
Councilman,
thank you.
Councilman, Burns, please. You've gotten the concurrence that you've asked for. Would you like to rescind the amendment motion you made, or would you like to keep it? Either is your right. What would you like to do, sir?
Well, thinking about it, I was happy until I heard that the mayor's office could change your mind when we would do this. And the mayor, who I also happen to know is in favor of adding these back.
Great.
But it's a matter of when. If we say, okay, you know what, we've decided, the mayor's office decided that we're going to do this at budget time, which is what, September, October, November, then it would go into effect in January. Then we would post the jobs in January. We'd hire somebody, it would go to March, April. It would be about a year before we'd have these two positions. Whereas if we did it tonight, we could post the jobs tomorrow. We might have somebody this summer actually working. So, you know, again, on the way over here, I passed, I think it's number 118 Pennsylvania Avenue, 2 doors from Weiss Market. And the grass is 2 feet high and it's a deserted building and they complain about the rats and am I supposed to tell those 2 neighbors, you know what, I voted tonight, maybe next year we're going to have somebody that can get over to see you. I just have a problem with that.
All right. Well, on a discussive level, I'm just going to put out there right now in my non-presidential aspect, adding substantively to the discussion. If you keep it moving forward, which is fine, as you're right, I am going to vote nay on the amendment proposal because it is my understanding as it relates to collective bargaining salaries of individuals, there's an E&A approval element that we do not have. So we're literally voting for something that doesn't even have the approval of the Board of Estimate and Apportionment that is required. So given that fact, I'm just, again, on a substantive level, I'm in the camp of Councilman Strawn. I am not going to deny these raises that 100% of the entire code enforcement department has requested. And you've already heard me, I've made a commitment. It's on the record at the next meeting as a discussion item. I'm
Right.
all on board for it.
Right.
And I'm also bored, not just in spirit, but in a practical sense, to get this as quickly as possible. So again, Councilman Burns, procedurally, I will ask. You stated earlier that if you received concurrence, you'd be okay. No. So I'm asking you, it is your right either way. Do you want to keep the motion of the amendment on the floor or not?
Right.
Yes or no?
Are you going to keep the agenda? Are you going to keep this on the agenda for the next work session regardless?
I just asked
You
the
did that,
city,
so that's-
I just did that. I did that on
Okay.
the record.
Okay, so I will rescind my motion to amend the RL.
Okay, so the motion has been rescinded. Is there any discussion on introductory ordinance 23-78 as submitted? Seeing none, is the question called?
Call the question, Mr. President.
Councilwoman Freeman.
Thank you, Mr. President.
My
Sorry,
apologies.
that's okay. I think it bears repeating since, you know, the discussion thus far has been on the amendment and not on the actual legislation. I just want to repeat that again on the record. I am in favor. I will vote for this legislation with the understanding and the commitment that reinstating these 2 defunded code enforcement inspectors is a discussion item on the work session, the next upcoming work session, also with the understanding that we will work together with all of my colleagues in order to find a satisfactory way to not only give these code inspectors and code enforcement officers a more than well-deserved raise, but also lighten their workload to the amount that they're expecting from this position, and have the appropriate support within the department so that they can perform their jobs to the best of their ability and with the quality of life of the citizens and the residents in mind. So there's an important caveat there that is extremely important for me to note on the record. My support is contingent upon separate legislation that will refund these two vacant positions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman Freeman. Any other discussion? Again, just for the record, Madam Clerk, let's make this a discussion item for the work session agenda, 6 p.m., 5th of June, which is the next work session we have coming. Seeing no other discussion, is a question called? Question's been called. The clerk will call the roll. Madam Clerk.
Councilwoman Resonetti,
Aye.
Councilwoman Riley,
Nay.
Councilwoman Friedman,
Aye.
Councilman Burns,
Aye.
Councilman Strawn,
Aye.
Councilman Scanlon,
Aye.
and President Scringy.
Aye.
That's 6 ayes, 1 nay. Riley.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Thank you all. Moving on to the non-preferred agenda, the Chair recognizes Councilman Scanlon for the purposes of a motion concerning introductory ordinance 23-82.
Thank you, Mr. President. Introductory ordinance 23-82, an ordinance to amend the 2023 Parks and Recreation budget to defund one senior parks maintainer and one park technician, and fund one park maintenance maintainer and one groundskeeper.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion by Councilman Scanlon, seconded by Councilwoman Resonetti. Discussion. Seeing none, is the question called? Question's been called. The clerk will call the roll. Madam Clerk.
Councilwoman Resonetti,
Aye.
Councilwoman Riley is absent. Councilman Member Friedman,
Aye.
Councilman Burns,
Aye.
Councilman Strawn,
Aye.
Councilman Scanlon,
Aye.
and President Scringy.
Aye.
That's 6 ayes, 1 absent. Riley.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. This time, the Chair recognizes Councilman Scanlon for the purposes of a motion concerning introductory resolution 23-37.
Thank you, Mr. President. Introductory ordinance 23-37, a resolution authorizing the mayor to accept the community project funding grant for community policing and crime prevention.
Do I have a
Second.
second? Motion by Councilman Scanlon, seconded by Councilwoman Resonetti. Discussion. Councilwoman Freeman.
Thank you, President Scringy. There are some aspects of this grant that I think are legitimate community safety enhancers and crime preventers. There are certain aspects of environmental design, crime prevention through environmental design that I do agree with. But this grant is close to $1 million, and there are some things that would be funded that don't lead to safer communities, especially when we consider which communities are historically and continually surveilled. And, things like hotspot policing, while I understand the logic of it, right? Devoting resources to hotspots of crime makes sense in terms of a use of resources. But when we zoom out a little bit and we think, well, why are these hotspots of crime? It's because we don't invest in these areas. For example, if there's a vacant home, a blighted home, right, and there's crime inside, there's people who are squatting in there or selling drugs or using drugs. right? We can say, well, that's a hot spot, but we can also zoom out and say, well, why are people in there? Why are people squatting in there? Is it because they like to live there? No, it's because it's extremely difficult to find affordable housing that's actually up to code, that has landlords that take care of the properties. And if we had $864,000 to go into, let's say, housing or the code department, that would also solve a lot of the issues that this grant purports to address, but we could actually get it at the source of the issue and find people safe, stable housing instead of installing things like plate readers that, increase surveillance on communities who already have a lot of police presence there. So as per usual, almost always, I know this is a grant, and yet I still can't vote in favor of bringing all of this money to surveil communities that we know look a certain way. So I will not be voting in favor of this legislation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman Freeman. Any other discussion? Seeing none, is the question called?
Call the question, Mr. President?
Question's been called. The clerk will call the roll. Madam Clerk.
Councilwoman Resaletti,
Aye.
Councilwoman Riley is absent, Councilmember Friedman,
Nay.
Councilman Burns,
Aye.
Councilman Strawn,
Aye.
Councilman Scanlon,
Aye.
and President Scringy.
Aye.
That's 5 ayes, 1 nay, Friedman, and 1 absent, Riley.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Chair recognizes Councilman Scanlon for the purposes of a motion concerning introductory resolution 23-38.
Thank you, Mr. President. Introductory Resolution 23-38, a resolution authorizing the mayor to enter an agreement with Chow for use of CVY 46 CDBG funds for cold storage capacity.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion by Councilman Scanlon, seconded by Councilman Strawn. Discussion. Seeing none, is the question called?
Called.
Question's been called. The clerk will call the roll. Madam Clerk.
Councilwoman Resaletti,
Aye.
Councilwoman Riley is absent, Councilmember Friedman,
Aye.
Councilman Burns,
Aye.
Councilman Strawn,
Aye.
Councilman Scanlon,
Aye.
and President Scringy.
Aye.
That's 6 ayes, 1 absent, Riley.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Chair recognizes Councilman Scanlon for the purposes of a motion regarding introductory resolution 23-39.
Thank you, Mr. President. Introductory Resolution 23-39, a resolution authorizing the mayor to accept New York State Municipal Workers' Compensation Alliance Award for a safe workplace.
Second.
Motion by Councilman Scanlon, seconded by Councilwoman Resaletti. Discussion. Seeing none, is the question called?
Call the question.
Question's been called. The clerk will call the roll. Madam Clerk.
Councilwoman Resaletti,
Aye.
Councilwoman Riley is absent, Councilmember Friedman,
Aye.
Councilman Burns,
Aye.
Councilman Strawn,
Aye.
Councilman Scanlon,
Aye.
and President Scringy.
Aye.
That's 6 ayes, 1 absent, Riley.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Chair recognizes Councilman Scanlon for the purposes of a motion concerning introductory resolution 23-40.
Thank you, Mr. President. Introductory Resolution 23-40, a resolution authorizing the mayor to accept a grant from Broome County for landscaping of the State Street Stormwater Gardens.
Second.
Motion by Councilman Scanlon, seconded by Councilwoman Resaletti. Discussion. Seeing none, is the question called? Question's been called. The clerk will call the roll. Madam Clerk.
Councilwoman Resaletti,
Aye.
Councilwoman Riley is absent, Councilmember Friedman,
Aye.
Councilman Burns,
Aye.
Councilman Strawn,
Aye.
Councilman Scanlon,
Aye.
and President Scringy.
Aye.
That's 6 ayes, 1 absent, Riley.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Chair recognizes Councilman Scanlon for the purposes of a motion concerning introductory resolution 23-41.
Introductory Resolution 23-43 or 41, I'm sorry. Resolution authorizing the mayor to enter an agreement with Hunt Engineered Architects, Land Surveyors for railroad bridge visual inspection.
Do I have a second? Motion by Councilman Scanlon, seconded by Councilwoman Resaletti. Discussion. Seeing none, is the question called?
Call the question, Mr. President.
Question's been called. The clerk will call the roll. Madam Clerk.
Councilwoman Resaletti,
Aye.
Councilwoman Riley is absent, Councilmember Friedman,
Aye.
Councilman Burns,
Aye.
Councilman Strawn,
Aye.
Councilman Scanlon,
Aye.
and President Scringy.
Aye.
That's 6 ayes, 1 absent. Riley.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. At this time, Chair recognizes Councilman Scanlon for the purposes of a motion concerning introductory resolution 23-41.
Thank you, Mr. President. Introductory resolution 23-42. Resolution authorizing the Binghamton Pride Coalition to conduct fireworks on June 10th, 2023.
Do I have a second?
Second.
A motion and a second has been made for introductory resolution 23-42. Out of rules and special studies. Any discussion?
Call question.
Question's been called. The clerk will call the roll. Madam Clerk.
Councilwoman Rosnetti,
Aye.
Councilwoman Riley is absent. Councilmember Friedman,
Aye.
Councilman Burns,
Aye.
Councilman Strawn,
No, we did it. Yeah.
Councilman Strong.
Is it me?
Yep.
Aye.
Councilman Scanlon,
Aye.
and President Scringy.
Aye.
That's 6 ayes, 1 absent. Friedman or Riley, sorry.
Moment for court counsel.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. That being said, we'll move on to communication from council members. Councilman Burns, floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just want to thank everybody for the discussion tonight on the code department. And I know that, we had talked about doing something as a city council. We had been meeting for code and then we stopped meeting. And so I hope that in 2 weeks, we come up with something and that those that committed to do something that we do it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Burns. Councilman Strawn, floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yes, I concur with that with Mr. Councilman Burns, and I think we all recognize the importance of code and also recognize the good work that the loyal employees that we already have are doing. So I think that we can cover both things. I just wanted to mention that on Sunday, there was a concert at the Southside Commons sponsored by Southside Neighborhood Assembly, Marabito, and several other local businesses. It was well attended. Obviously, we can't control the weather. Sunday was gorgeous. And I just want to mention they're going to have 3 more throughout the summer. I believe it's the 3rd Sunday of June, July, and August would make it June 18th, July 16th, and August 20th. But it was a great time. There was a lot of people there, and just 2 things. Just want to thank the SNA for doing this and the local businesses that supported it, and encourage people from all over the city to take advantage of those opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Scanlon, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. President. I wish Councilman Riley was here to hear this comment, but I'd like to congratulate Mayor Cram and his staff for receiving the Affordable Housing Award for the New York State Conference of Mayors. A well-deserved award, and I can again congratulate them. I guess that's it for right now. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilwoman Resonetti, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Great reminder, Councilman Scanlon. Yeah, definitely big congratulations for that. Couple other quick things, just a big congrats to the American Civic Association and the event that they had this past weekend. They had the All Nations Day or celebration, a day where different cultures came together to just highlight their their cultures really, and to remind us all how amazing our community is, and how many just wonderful backgrounds that we have just right here in Binghamton. The other thing too is when we're talking about code, first of all, thanks to everybody for that great discussion, but a big thank you to code, because it is that time of cutting grass and people calling in, and I just watched them be out there and do a great job. So thank you for that. And also, I wanted to highlight, I got a couple of calls and actually I was stopped a couple of different times. It wasn't calls from folks in the district regarding our police officers walking the beats. I don't know if you guys heard about that,
Yeah.
but people are so excited
Definitely.
about that. Did you see that? Yeah. And actually I did get one message about it too. It just folks saying how wonderful it is to see our police officers out there on foot and just, just connecting and having conversations. It was just really wonderful to hear. I'm so thrilled to know that they're out there doing that. And I support that 100%. And lastly, we have a holiday weekend coming up. I just want to wish everybody a happy holiday weekend and enjoy, be safe. And that's it. Have a good night.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilwoman Friedman, floor is yours.
Thank you, President Scaringi. There were a couple of events that I was fortunate enough to attend last week, neither of which was in my district, but that's okay. We can travel around the city. So there was a community orchard cleanup on the south side, actually on Corbett Ave, and it's the Dick Andrus Memorial Orchard. And on a personal note, Dick Andrus was a really influential person to me personally. He founded the Environmental Studies Department at Binghamton University, which is what brought me to Binghamton. That's the department, my bachelor's degree is there. And he also fixed up the house that I currently live in now. And he was just a really influential person that loved gardening and community orchards, and just the idea of having trees with fruit that people can just, take. So that was a really lovely event, and I learned how to use a weed whacker. So that was exciting. And the other event that was a lot of fun was at the Kilmer Mansion, also not in my district, but that's okay. About the steamy side of Binghamton, some historical, colorful characters. So that was very interesting. And coming up this upcoming week, there is a Vines community meal that's happening on Tuesday, May 30th. And I didn't write down the location, but I'm sure you can go on their website to find out more. And there's also a Northside Assembly meeting on Thursday, June 1st. It's always the first Thursday of the month at 6 o'clock at Centenary Shenango Street United Methodist Church on Shenango Street. So come by and voice your concerns, your pride for Binghamton. Tell us. You can even tell us things that we're doing well. Can you imagine that? And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Just want to congratulate Mayor Cram and everybody in City Hall on the NICOM award with respect to housing. Definitely want to thank Code, DPW, and Parks, who have been very, very busy and will continue to be dealing with situations as they arise, particularly as the weather gets warmer. Definitely following up with Councilwoman Rezanetti, definitely want to thank our BPD. This was just a great idea to really just have officers walking the beat, and how old school that actually is. If you've been in Binghamton for a very long time, and when I say a very long time, I'm probably talking over 30 to 40 years. I've heard from residents who have been here for a long time that was actually a very normal daily scene during the warmer weather. And I think it's important to note as well, they weren't walking even just on Main Street thoroughfares, but actually in neighborhoods with families, just looking at things, if there's anything that the seven of us note as we go through our time here on council, it's one thing to drive through the district that you represent. It's a complete other to walk through it. And just sparking up those conversations with homeowners and residents is really great. So I want to congratulate them on that. Congratulations to all our graduates at SUNY Binghamton and SUNY Broome coming into June in the Binghamton School District, Seton Catholic. And lastly, we have a long weekend coming up. Please make sure you are spending time with your family, friends, and remember why we are here, and think of the fallen who have given everything and the families for their sacrifices. So thank them for their service. Motion to adjourn.
President, motion to adjourn.
Do I have a second? Motion by Councilman Scanlon, seconded by Councilman Strawn. We are adjourned.